So the question is, two things before we get into this is we have a little bit of time. We have a raffle for free admission to an upcoming luncheon for Tech Titans. In order to participate in this raffle, you simply have to fill out a survey card. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, what you would like to see more of. Again, we try to use this as a kickoff session, but really we want to solicit you, your companies, your innovation groups to be part of this journey with us. Because the best thing that can share best practices is when someone like Jeff comes up here and says, this is why this failed. This is why this succeeded. This is what's working. This is what sold my boss in order to allow me to do an innovative project. So what we talked about today is really two major things. Is one, what's on the horizon, what's facing us right now. So cybersecurity issues, zero trust models, IoT, sensors, brain-to-machine interfaces, these things are happening today right in front of us. Like Jeff said, there's things that we believe in our human brain, the way to process the world around us, that are going to be over the horizon. When we do these types of models, everyone believes that this is 3 to 5 years or 5 to 10 years down the road. In reality, it's 18 months. That's not across the board, but it is a process that people use to free themselves to think about the implications. So I'm going to be building a lot on Jeff's presentation as we give you a preview into what we're going to do, the model we're going to leverage to be able to explore not only these trends, but other trends as a collective group. Not only the people that are attending today, but the people that are going to participate both virtually as well as in these meetings moving forward. And this is how you harness the horizon that's in front of you. Now, one of the things that Jeff was sharing is that you have these trends, and he said based upon these trends, there's a series of hypotheses that you want to create. So as an example, we had a client who said, what is the impact of IoT on the insurance industry? Okay, so that's a fairly standard question. And so in some ways, we had the autonomous vehicle with product liability versus auto and collision liability versus admitted versus unadmitted insurance of those that you were play in the insurance business, and self-insured. And so what does that mean for both standard and non-standard insurance carriers? But we also had a question of how vulnerable were our lives becoming from IoT? So we had this hypothesis that as IoT became more prevalent in our environment, that you were going to have this threat surface area was going to increase exponentially. So what we proved to them through a scenario that led to an experiment was that we could reverse engineer a dishwasher, hack it, and set it on fire remotely. And we did that. And we proved that digital arson was real. And it wasn't talking about digital arson. It was talking about the real work that was being done to do digital arson. You can go and look at, people are familiar with the Jeep hack from 3 years ago at DEF CON. Anybody? Jeep hack? Type in Jeep hack into Google. You get to see what a couple of engineers did to first tie into the physical systems of a Jeep and then back out to be able to control that car remotely. Now, it's much more difficult than it sounds, but once we know you're able to do it, you're able to go through and do it repeatedly and remotely. Getting into the actual circuit itself is the hard part. When you back out, that's the easy part to be able to get into. Just as a quick summary to kind of launch into this, what happened from that? Number one, there was a huge reputation risk. Fiat Chrysler, right? Their response was go to the dealership or we'll send you a USB drive that you can update your system yourself. Took months and weeks in order to actually execute the patch that reversed that system. BlackBerry was involved. What? Are you familiar with QNX? QNX is a real-time operating system that's owned by BlackBerry. They were the code that was actually manipulated in order to turn that listening function into a broadcast function in the car. Harmon, infotainment unit that was using BlackBerry, all right? And Sprint, because they did not segment and partition the traffic that was malicious that caused this. Did a loss occur? If you watch the video, the answer is no. There was not a wreck, there was not a collision. But all of those parties were involved in an FTC investigation to understand what in the world happened from a demonstration only. So this is the world we're living in. Now, who knows, if you are familiar with the story, who knows what happened simultaneously to this Jeep hack that happened in St. Louis? 2 other companies had the same hack. One was GM, and the other was Tesla. Guess how they patched? Over the air. They were done in minutes, weeks, days. Tesla, the others, months. So going through this process, you're going to understand that ethnographic lens that we're talking about, and more specifically, how you need to respond as an organization. And again, this process can happen relatively quickly within organizations, and sometimes it takes an entire year to socialize these types of disruptions on the organization. Now, what do you need to do? Now, I'm a former DoD guy. I'm a U.S. Army. And so in the U.S. Army, we have something called the blue team and the red team. Before we conduct any operation, we have somebody who is steeped in the adversary's tactics look at our plans and go, you know what, this is how I'd stop you. This is how I would stop your attack. This is how I would counter the offensive you're trying to do. If you, internal to your organization, do a scenario planning, you're going to get sunshine and lollipops and everything's going to be wonderful. No one's going to go out of business. No one's going to lose their job. And the world is going to spin the exact same way as you before. If you take the same assumptions and trends and you give it to an adversary force within your organization, these are the troublemakers, let's be honest, these are the people that are always counter, and say, take those core assumptions and figure out a way to destroy my business, you're going to get a holistic view of the impact of these technologies. In our experience, a lot of people believe this is Star Trek when it's really Deep Space Nine. Now, those that are not Trekkies, Star Trek, everything worked. Deep Space Nine, nothing worked. The truth lies somewhere in the middle. But this gives you a holistic viewpoint when you go and you organize these types of activities in your company, that you need to have a blue team and a red team, a friendly force and opposing force. Make sure that those employees are not going to leave and go start a company to destroy your business, because that could be a bad thing. So be wise in your selection of these people that participate in the red team. And we're going to go into how you build these teams. So each of these slides are going to be a subject of our next forum. So I'm just giving you an overview of the practical exercises. So we're not going to have this speaker stand up and everything. We're going to form tables. We're going to have workshops. We're going to do practical exercises. And the goal is you leave here at each of the next sessions with a tool you can take back and leverage, and a workshop that gives you some practical experience so that you can take this back to your organization and to accomplish some of these activities. We talked about the trends. We see that there's multiple trends you can look like. There's a CIA fact book that's a favorite of ours for geopolitical trends. Mary Meeker's presentation, industry research. There's a plethora of information out there. You just got to go get it, digest it, and apply it, okay? So you do your trends. However, to Jeff's point, it's never about a single trend. Never. Almost never. Most of the time, it's a combination of trends that drive a strategy, right? So it's really a Venn diagram approach where you look at this and you say, all these trends coming together, what is the implication? And I'll just go back to Jeff's example because it really illustrates this. If you have an autonomous vehicle, what is the need, right, to go out and buy a car? If you don't buy a car, what's the need to ship a car from Detroit down to Texas? And if you don't have to buy a car, then what is the need to have, or you have an electrified vehicle, what is the need to have oil and gas stations versus electrical charging stations? And if you have an electrical car, why do firefighters have to switch the way they put out automotive fires? Because a lithium-ion battery fire is much different than a regular gasoline fire, right? You think about these intersections that happen with technology. It's about one technology plus another technology coming to fruition. Now, there's a risk in this. There are people that have done this who developed the entire concept of shutterfly, and it failed miserably. And they put it on a shelf, and they put it in a closet, and they closed the closet, and then they closed the door, they locked the door, and they never looked at that idea again. And guess magically what happened that allowed that idea to be successful? Broadband. Because it failed because people weren't going to wait 5 minutes to upload a picture. They had the concept, they had the business model, they had the brand positioning and market positioning in their industry, and they took an idea and they put it on a shelf and they never looked at it again. So you're going to come up with crazy ideas. Like, as an example, an intelligent house decides it's going to kill the occupants to stop a pandemic. That's a combination of IoT trends, geopolitical trends, all coming together to create a scenario that you're going to respond to. And this is just a grounding exercise, to put it in very practical terms, what the impact and implications of these trends, both technology and others. We know technology influences a lot of our world, but there are other trends that come into play in order to drive this out. So that's what we're going to focus on. Then you need to really go through a process of everyone coming up with what I call, we're still old enough in this room, most of us, to understand what newspaper headlines are, taglines, the short phrases that say, shared autonomous vehicle reduces car ownership by 50%. Now, what is that, right? That's really, what does that mean? 3D printing will reduce 10% of the SKUs shipped by a certain date. 3D printing will, that's a duplicate, be able to do that. But essentially you look at this, but there are, let me just pause you. We did a red team approach for one of our clients, and we found that this is not what to watch. It was to watch the business model, because how the business was run, and those became your technology trigger. So you got to really focus your people not to be too positive or too negative, because they'll always go shift to one side or the other. Iterative development, and you got to prioritize and select. So you're going to see that there are two driving trends that are going to impact your organization, right? Your industry, your business. And you have to look not only within your industry, but you better look outside of your industry, because that's where the disruption's coming. And don't think that because you're in a regulated industry that no one is going to come in and take your Cheerios. Uber, Airbnb violated about numerous city and state regulations, and they said, we're going to go fast enough, hard enough, wide enough that, you know what, Austin wants to kick us out, we'll leave for a couple months and we'll be back. Houston wants to kick us out, yeah, we'll leave, we'll come back. And so don't think that you're in a highly regulated industry. I mean, if Elon Musk is launching rockets and taking Lockheed Martin and Boeing's marbles right now, going to space, you'll be disrupted. And if you're not preparing to respond to that disruption, your days are numbered. And please don't wait until your stock price is so low you can't do anything about it, because then you're up against, you're at your blockbuster moment. So then we take, again, this comes from work that came from Shell and many other places, to say, number one, you have a number one hypothesis that is really going to drive your industry. It could be a material hypothesis, a geopolitical hypothesis. You have another hypothesis which is equally as important, and you start building scenarios, right? You might start building scenarios around this, and some of it may be, as an example, in retail. Do we have anybody in retail here? Okay, but we all are users of retail, so the shopper journey is going to change. The way people go to the store is going to diminish. Why would I go to Toys R Us, who's now bankrupt, versus ordering all my kids' Legos over Amazon and it comes to my house? Why do, unfortunately, I have a daughter that loves American Girl, and we drop even more money there than we ever drop on Legos? Why? It's an experience. So customer experience is going to play. And for retail, a couple of the specific SKUs, their number one issue wasn't a change in the technology, change in the business model. So Dollar Shave Club. Everybody in retail is terrified of Dollar Shave Club. Why? Do they know more about the customer? Do they have greater customer intimacy? Do they have better products? Do they innovate the way razors are made? No, they didn't. They changed the business model. And so right now, in your market today, there are over 2,000 subscription services available today. For $2,000 a month, you can have a service, a subscription to get a Porsche, right? You can buy your clothes, walk the runway, stitch. There's an infinite number of trends that are going to impact you, and this allows you to prioritize that effort. And we're going to go through this as well. Anybody seen the Day of Glass? Day of Glass 1, Day of Glass 2. These are future scenarios that tell a story. They tell a story about what the Day of Glass will be. This is an illustration that really focuses on 2 to 5 representative roles, creates a storyline that integrates all this information into how someone's going to operate in the future. Now, why do you do this? Because if you abstract it and you talk about it in the ethereal, no one's going to believe it. If you tell, this is how a customer service rep, this is how an underwriter is going to do it, this is how people are going to buy this property or this insurance or this item, then that allows you to really ground it into a story that you can effectively communicate, because it's back to the why or the so what. This is a way to tell stories. So we will go through this in our next workshop, right? We'll have save the date at the end to be able to talk about this. But if you're going to stop there, you're basically saying, I've created a work of science fiction, which it is. Is it a powerful tool? Yeah, it is. It communicates the future effectively. But if you stop here, you've wasted a lot of time and effort. So the next phase is to turn these stories into reality. You have to do an impact assessment to say, what does this scenario, what's the realistic probability that the scenario is going to truly impact me, or what's the impact to my customers, my products, my market, the business model, and the organization. So you have to do an impact analysis, right? That will be in a following session, because we just don't have enough time in 2 hours to get through this entire process. Then you need to take it into action, because guess what? These are hypotheses. This is your guess. This is just, you believe, just like Jeff's saying. You need to turn this into future state capabilities and continuous improvement. People believe that innovation is about creating the next big widget. It's the invention. I don't care what you call it, but define it within your organization. But you better be doing continuous improvement, because millions and millions of dollars can be reaped out of your organizations with just continuous improvement. New products and future state capabilities are there as well, but then you have these models that allow you to do 4 to 6 week sprints that drive surveillance activities, right? That drive experiments, hackathons, or SWAT teams that come into play. Now, some of the things that, again, surveillance, what does that mean, right? We'll get into what does that mean by surveillance. Generally speaking, surveillance means things that are beyond your control. Regulation could be beyond your control. Solid state storage could be beyond your control. But in the healthcare market today, there's a $6 billion electronic healthcare records market that's out there today, forced by the government regulation for hospital chains to implement EHRs as well. Apple just announced you can put your healthcare record on your mobile device. It's not a big deal, is it? Now I don't have to get my doctor and all my information there. It comes to me. You know what else that solves? A sticky regulation called patient matching, which is you can't have patient matching. So that makes it very difficult across different hospital chains to share information about you. Well, if I'm controlling all my information on my own healthcare, on my own device, why do I need an EHR? Or what is the difference in an EHR tomorrow? What does that mean in terms of my relationship with my doctor? What does that mean in terms of my control of my own healthcare? So these are things that you watch in solid state storage or regulatory conditions. These may be things that you don't control, but you should watch. Also, why did we know this was happening 5 years ago? Because in the financial services industry, we started virtualizing our credit cards on our phone. And the credit card companies kind of sidestepped the regulations of stored name pairs, and they said, well, if you're a consumer and you decide to put your credit card on your phone and you have your number and your name, that's fine, but that's an individual choice. So we began to distribute or decentralize that information in the financial services industry well ahead of where Apple was going with their healthcare and others. So these are surveillance. Then there are things that you can test. Experiential learning is critical to validating your hypothesis. One of the key things that you are going to do in this process, and we're going to talk about how you define this, how you quantify, how you design experiments, but it really is understanding, I didn't think about that. I should have done this. That's not going to work. Wow, that's super expensive. A real cool idea. It works kind of, but it's not ready. It's 5 years down the road. Last year we did 92 POCs. Right? It's a lot of proof of concepts. Last 2 years we've done 140. That's a lot of lessons learned. Some failed miserably, right? Like Elon Musk's rocket when he first tried to auto-land it, right? Self-recovery of its rockets. But man, that last launch looked awfully pretty, right? Most of us grew up with the space program, watching the shuttles go off. I think that was the first time I was really excited about the space program in a long, long time. But it came with catastrophic failures. And your organization's got to be willing to say, we're going to try something that's not going to work. We're going to learn for ourselves what these technologies are. We're not going to have someone else tell us what these technologies will do. And we're going to create new capabilities that you can't buy in the market, because that's how you drive differentiation. That's how you drive competitive advantage. So we're going to go through surveillance models, experimentation models, again, a preview into what we're going to do for the remainder of the year. Kind of the summary of today, the long-range planning requires hypothesis development. Quadrants help, storytelling helps, but you got to turn that future state scenario, whatever you create in your company, and it could be a 1-week process, it could be a 2-day process, it could be a 3-month process, but at least take time to inform yourselves about these technologies. The other thing that we find really lacking in many organizations is your teams have no idea about current technologies in the marketplace. Leave here today, go talk to your training department, get in your budget an ability to send them to conferences, send them to programs, come up with a way that they can be exposed through hackathons or through universities with continuous training so they can understand what is happening in the technologies. Because why is that? They're heads down focused on doing what you've asked them to do, what you're measuring them to do. And they don't really have time, and they're not motivated to go look up and out and over. And I've been in meetings with very excellent and exceptional program and project managers who have told me there's no way to secure a mobile device, to put any sensitive data on that without having a container. Now, we can get into pros and cons, but they weren't even willing to, they didn't have awareness to say, but there are some solutions, multi-factor, other things that are out there that allow for mitigating that risk. They weren't aware. There's an awareness problem in every organization that everybody interested in within your companies can help overcome by giving them access. Microsoft, back to quantum computing to kind of wrap this up, they're coming up with a language. They want you to use the Microsoft language for coding quantum computing. We have clients that are sending people to Microsoft. Why? They know it's not going to happen anytime soon, but they got to get exposure. They got to have people that are be aware of it and understand how it's going to be. So save the date. Save the date. Remember, start filling out your thing, because everyone's going to run out of here. You're not going to get your freebies. Okay? April 24th. It will be somewhere at UTD. We think. The big blockchain event is 18th and 19th. That's going to be a tremendous event with many speakers coming that are world-class and world-renowned startups, thought leaders in this space, blockchain, AI, IoT. Tech Titans, if you're not a member, join. Get access to all their events. Hopefully all of you go. There was an IoT summit just a couple of weeks ago. There's cybersecurity forums, there's HR forums. We're not here to replace those. We're here to help coordinate those activities to understand how do you apply those to your organization through either this experimentation model, the scenario model, or the surveillance model. So when we come back next week, we're going to be standing up hopefully a LinkedIn group here in the next week to broadcast and distribute the materials from today, as well as the video that we've been recording. So all that will be processed out, and you can listen to Charlie's 1 little minute on quantum, or his couple minutes on BMI, or the imagination age, or on scenario planning. And then we're going to begin collecting from people that are interested in participating, start really developing the trends and hypotheses that you think are going to impact the organization. And we're going to do that through asynchronous communication, through LinkedIn and others. And then we come back in April, we're going to run through practical exercise and how do you do this. Now, the goal here is that we're not going to do it for you. We're going to give you tools, approaches, methodologies, and drive collaboration within the community to help you to understand how you can apply this back in your own organization. Okay? 3 minutes ahead of schedule. Thank you, Charlie, for catching us up. So I'd like to thank UTD, Brian, once again for hosting us, Tech Titans for kind of helping to coordinate, and most of all, each of you who have taken time out of your day. We hope you come back. This is a long journey, but our goal here is to transfer as much information that we all collectively have learned about innovation and emerging technology to your organization so you too cannot be Blockbuster, and maybe you can be Netflix. Thank you so much for your time today.